And after a little while, we do a little better, but we still lose. And then someone else shows up. Another friend. But this is a friend who's pretending to be our friend, not our enemy, and says, I'm gonna help you chase away the bad guy. And then they help chase away the friend who is pretending to be the bad guy, and then invasion's over.
How many people are actually gonna die in this invasion, Mr. Cramer? If you ever watched this video, Mr. Cramer, or if somebody wants to take this as a soundbite and give it to him, that's my question. Because it sounds like that little goofy strategy you just outlined involves an actual war. When you say asses handed to us, it sounds like you mean hundreds or thousands of U.S. service personnel being killed. And then what will happen? Then people watch this video and they watch Greer's work, and they realize after the fact that, my brother, my son, my husband was killed in a false flag attack that's completely out in the open. Everybody knows it was out in the open, and they did this whole charade as a way to reveal something that they could have done peacefully, but they decided to do it this way. I think at that point, the thing to do is to take some of that ET technology that we've disclosed, the railgun or the anti-gravity technology, and then use it on the motherfucking White House. Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus, and today we're going to go over a presentation by a man named Randy Cramer, who is a mysterious character who has really added to the mystery and the riddle of so many of these subjects. And I'm going to it's going to be a longer video. I'm going to pick apart his entire presentation, which the thesis of the presentation being that in order to make ET contact, and he's saying this from an alleged position of authority, claiming to be literally a spokesperson for the United States Marine Corps, a secret section of it that relates to secret space programs and ET trade and commerce, that the only way to finally disclose ETs to the public is through a fake alien invasion. And why I think that this is a terrible idea if this guy is telling the truth. And it would almost seem this way just because what he is selling sounds like the kind of ridiculous thinking that comes out of military think tanks, like the same kinds of people who thought the Vietnam War was a good idea, and that when you hear them presenting it, it's filled with all these good intentions. They have this greater idea. It's going to, it's going to suck at first, but it's for the greater good. All this kind of stuff, very military way of thinking, which sometimes is sometimes it's military thinking. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's extremely foolish, and that's the impression I get from this guy. But really, everything he says is interesting. But a little bit of background. So Cramer is a guy with a beer belly who claims to have been a super soldier on Mars. Okay, so that alone casts a little bit of shade on him. And in this presentation, he is definitely must have been Casual Friday, because he looks like it's Casual Friday. So this guy comes on stage wearing, I don't know, it looks like a t-shirt with a little pullover on top and shorts. So I mean, I don't know what's going on with this guy. He doesn't look the part per se, but what he says is extremely interesting, and that's why it's worth highlighting. Because I will tell you right now, I mean, Randy Cramer got on my radar because he was saying things in relation to a near-death experience that he claimed that he had, where he described what the afterlife is like, or what the afterlife is. And one of the most clearest and most concise, and in my opinion, accurate ways I've ever heard. So where is he getting this information from? And in case you're wondering, how did he describe it? He talks about the nature of higher densities of existence, and that the one that's adjacent to our world is similar to our world, and that it's still a real physical solid place, but it's operating on a higher density, higher wavelength, and that you can decide to come back to Earth from that point or live a life on that side. I forget all the details of how he described it, but like his alleged NDE and what he described, it was just more clear, more concise than most NDEs that I've read or listened to. So that's why this guy came on the map. So how is it that he claims that he's been to Mars and that he works in this kind of special operation or this special division of the USMC? Well, he's one of these guys who claims that he had this 20 and back experience, where basically what happens is a group of extraterrestrials, or maybe even terrestrials, they come down and they have technology to steal your consciousness out of your body. And this is what Tony Rodriguez says happened to him. It's what Corey Goode says happened to him. People like William Tompkins, who was a high-level member of a high-level naval engineer, actually described the implementation of this technology. And he did some of his, William Tompkins came out into the public in his 90s, shortly before his death, and revealed all of these types of things, ultimately confirming these stories that many people have, which further adds to the mystery. So in this type of situation, someone's consciousness is allegedly taken out of their body with advanced ET technology and basically stuck into a new body, like stuck into a cloned body or something like that. And now that you're in a new cloned body, you go and you serve a tour in the military. So in this case, it's often about 20 years, and it might be a military corps, it might be something else, it might be might be engineering, it might be any number of different jobs or professions. But you've been selected, you've been chosen, and now they've borrowed your consciousness, they stuck it into a temporary body, but really it's still you, and it still looks like you, but they basically they've cloned you or something. And then when your tour of duty is done, your consciousness is consciousness transcends linear time. So if you're just operating through finding a way to take your soul or take the actual thing that is your consciousness out of your body, I guess you can send it anywhere in time that you want. So they just send it back in time to 5 minutes after they took it out. So now you just had a 20-year tour of duty, and on a separate timeline. And then they just stick you back in your body again. So it's a pretty fantastical idea. But why do so many people say that it's happened to them? And they come back, able to, in a very stone-faced way, recount their experiences down to tiny details. And so that is the mystery. And do I fully believe it? I don't know. Are they having experiences in this world, or is this some kind of an advanced astral plane experience? Is there an astral plane military, and that's not even actually happening in this reality? I don't know. I don't have the answers to those questions. But what we can do is listen to what Randy Cramer has to say and sort of pick it apart, I guess, and understand there's a lot of really interesting stuff he says in this presentation that breaks down the ET subject and what disclosure is or could be like, under very practical terms of how our civilization would handle it and what the opportunities would be, as well as what the thinking might be of the military-industrial complex of whom he claims to be a representative of. So he is basically a representative of the bad guys, Illumidonkey, whatever you want to, whoever you want to say. I can't say the full word because YouTube might censor me, so I'm stealing some thunder from the Edge of Wonder channel. They always call it Illumidonkey. So it's like he is a representative of the military cabal that controls everything, right? And he's almost like a PR guy, and basically saying this is exactly what we want to do. We don't want to suppress the technology. We want to bring it out to people, but we don't know how to do it, and yada, 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 yada. And he does make a good case. He makes a good sell. And let's hear it, and then I will pick it apart, I suppose, and then you guys can decide for yourselves. So let's go ahead and jump into the presentation, which comes through a channel called Near Death Experiment. Might be cool. I assume that they must talk about some pretty relevant topics. You can subscribe to them if you want. I don't know who originally posted the video, where it originally came from, but regardless, let's go ahead and take a listen now.
On behalf of the command, our next speaker, Captain Randy Cramer, is an officer who has been given authority to address the public on behalf of the command staff of the United States Marine Corps, special section that was created by President Eisenhower in 1953 as a covert military intelligence branch. This branch is has specific authority over extraterrestrial, multidimensional, non-human, and off-world beings, consortiums, and collectives, either sanctioned or unsanctioned, within actionable reach of any and all global territory. Randy is a product of a soldier augmentation project, Moon Shadow, a training program for children which he began at the age of 4, and later spent a 20-year tour of duty off-world, over 17 of which was served with the Mars Defense Force. Randy finished his service aboard the EDF SSS Nautilus under the command of Roger P. Kirkland as a Wing Air Command pilot under Project Radiant Guardian. In August of 2013, his superior officers requested he consider going public with their blessing, and he began to share his personal experience with the world in 2014. Now, please welcome with me, Randy Cramer.
How's everybody doing? Sweet. So I'm allergic to podiums, so and I kind of don't like stages either. So I'm just gonna kind of stand here and I'm gonna mill around a little bit, and then I'm gonna...
See, he's hip just like us. No, I don't want to give the guy too much shade. It's a good presentation.
I'm gonna tell some things and some stories, and you can be entertained, and maybe we'll have time for questions at the end. And normally, when I have a chance to talk to a group of people, I tend to have a good amount of time, which is hours, usually 3, 4, or 5 hours to address a group of people, which I can do my best to attempt to fill in the gaps on a single topic that I can do for that amount of time. So when I'm given a very tiny amount of time to talk about a lot of information, I feel a little pressed for, oh my God, what am I going to forget? What can I squeeze in? What's the most important thing? So I'm going to briefly cover a couple of points about myself, about what I do, and then I'm going to do my best to cram a 4-hour conversation into a very short period of time of what I think is the most important thing that I'm here to tell you today. So, my bio is, as it stands, all right, I guess we'll do a quick poll. How many people know who I am? You've heard of me, you've listened to interviews. Okay, how many people don't know who the hell I am? Okay, cool, fun. So those of you who don't know who I am, there are literally dozens of hours of interview time that I have done on the internet. I recently did...
It's true, he doesn't shut up. He's all over the internet. You can find hours and hours of Randy Cramer content if you want to go down the Randy Cramer rabbit hole. But there's other guys in this field I sometimes like a little bit more, but like he says, if nothing else, it's pretty darn entertaining.
Series of interviews with Gaia where Emery Smith, you know who he is? Okay, got to interview me. If you haven't seen those are really good, but there's also just tons of hours of stuff of me out there talking blah, 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 endless amounts of time about my career and what I've done. Since I don't have time to talk about that, I'm going to recommend, if you feel like you don't know who I am, have fun with that. There's tons of crap out there, and you can spend your time listening to me tell stories about being in the MDF or being a pilot, what it was like growing up in a training program, et cetera, et cetera. And I know some people really want to hear those stories, but that's not the most important thing for me to talk about today. So, of the two things that I consider the most important, the first one really is understanding something about the nature of being a human being. Because when we talk to and communicate with extraterrestrials, there can be a lot of conversations. First of all, this notion that they're all amazingly, crazily more technologically advanced than we are, not true. The notion that they're all mightily militarily superior to us, not true. There certainly are those who are much older, much more technologically advanced, much more superior to us, but there's also this scale of those who are still developing, those who have still entered into spacefaring species not that long ago, in the same way that we have not long ago. There are humanoid species and or other oxygen bipedal species which use similar things that we do, so we can trade with them. That makes good sense. But there's very little... When we talk about the advanced technologies, they're awesome. Spaceships are great. Wormholes are great. Free energy technology is great. Cellular regenerating technology is great. But when we talk to the older, more advanced species, they say, look, tech's cool. Understanding that your brain is a quantum entanglement computer that can bend matter and energy, slightly more important.
This is just so brilliant, and this is why I can't dislike Cramer. I've tried to dislike Cramer. I can't do it. It's so important what he's saying, that you can have all this powerful technology, but that's like, baby steps into just learning how to use your mind and consciousness to do everything you need to do. This is what we could call like astral technology. Okay, it's how on the astral side, if you want to teleport somewhere, you can use your mind to do it. If you want to regenerate because an astral alligator ripped your arm off, you want a new arm, you can regenerate it using your mind. All these abilities you have on higher densities that we can experience, and the idea is to actually bring that to this density, to this dimension. I don't know why. I guess we could all just die and go to the astral plane and live in a better civilization. Well, it's just part of the way species want to grow and progress, like raising up a lower level civilization up into a higher level civilization, bringing, exactly like he's saying, reaching a point with consciousness, power, that you can change the world around you. And as this quantum processing tool that bends and warps reality around it, which is what the brain can do. And that's what he's talking about. Pretty wild. This just cuts to the core of even a lot of stuff we talk about on this channel.
Okay. So one of the things that I do regularly back home where I live in Yelm, Washington, is I do a psionics class where I will teach from the United States Marine Corps Special Section Psionics Manual, where I discuss the basic principles of how your mind and your brain works, what brainwave patterns you're trying to create, what disciplines and fundamental principles and practices a person can take to engage their psionic abilities. And I have managed to teach the last 3 classes that I've taught. I have got 100% of my students to replicate a telekinetic practice. Okay? I have gotten 100% of my students to move an object without touching it physically. So once you understand that it's about rewiring your brain.
Couple things. So first, there is no United States Marine Corps special section, whatever it is he's talking about. As far as I can tell, this is something that you have to believe Cramer's testimony to believe that this is a real place. It's also why Cramer could not be arrested for impersonating a service personnel or stealing valor, because this is all stuff that, as far as the mainstream public is concerned, this is all stuff that's being made up by Cramer. And yet this made-up division has a psionics manual, and it has all these protocols and all this information that's apparently in this guy's head. So is he wildly schizophrenic, or is he schizophrenic and channeling all this information from somewhere else? Or is he telling the truth, and this is a real secret part, a real secret section? I don't know. But I'd like to see the results of this training. This is the investigator in me. I would love to go, if I had a budget, if I had more patrons, if you want to become a patron at patreon.com/afterlifetopics, and the budget of the channel goes up a little bit, then maybe I could do things like track down one of these psionics classes, track down one of these telekinesis classes, find out if really 100% of the participants are able to move objects. What objects do they move? Can we record it? Is it like Dean Radin's experiments? Is it on like quantum level? Is it on a very, like this macro PK, like on a very subtle level? Are you moving a pendulum around? What's he doing exactly? I'd like to get more information and find out how detailed these Marine Corps secret section psionics manuals are, if these are real things or if it's coming out of Cramer's brain. I don't know. That would require an investigation. I'd love to investigate it, actually. So let's keep hearing what he has to say. Oh yeah, by the way, you are watching Afterlife Topics of Metaphysics. This is the stuff that we tackle on this channel. Go down and hit that subscribe button, like the video, share the video. All that I appreciate helps keep this whole thing going.
So that you can do things and believe and understand that you can do them gives us an ability to have incredible potential over the bending and manipulation of matter and energy in our lives. That's more important in our evolution and our understanding of where we are in the universe than whether we have cool spaceships. Right? But it's not the most important thing that I can talk about today either. So it's one of the most important topics that I tend to focus on. It's why I teach a class. I'm doing a workshop later this evening. We're going to see if we can do about 3 or 4 hours. Anyone who's interested in that.
How bad can this guy really be when he's focusing on organic spirituality, organic progression without using, having to rely on technology, which comes with all of this stuff that we hear about, like the bad guys focus on. So yeah, I recognize this guy is a quote bad guy, but it also makes you wonder just how, it's all about shades of gray. I mean, even quote bad guys have there's good guys among the bad guys. It's all mixed, just like it is in real life. It's not like conspiracy theorists have you believe, where there's evil villains twirling mustaches. Even in the military-industrial complex that's in charge of secrecy and keeping the planet held back or whatever, I mean, there's different competing interests. Not everybody's evil. Not everybody is on the wrong page. It's different. It's not, it's not as black and white as, well, for one thing, as, some of the big players and big names in this area would like to have you believe. They're really kind of disconnected from reality sometimes, which is why I like Cramer so much, because he is more connected to reality, whether this is a reality that he dreamt up or if it's the objective world that we're talking about.
Either talk to me later or Leslie Mitchell-Kark, who's signing people up, and I'm happy to spend a few hours trying to convey something to you that makes that make a little more sense and where we can talk about that a little more fully. So now let's get on to what my superiors think is the most important topic that I should be talking about to you today. Earlier this year, while I was giving sort of my standard rounds of talks, my brigadier and I in our regular briefing session says to me, so you might want to think about having a different conversation at your next talk. And I was like, what do I want to talk about? And he said, you might want to go hoax alien invasion. I said, okay, why? And he said, well, some people dusted it off. We're looking at it kind of seriously, and we might be going that direction.
Who is this brigadier general? Apparently it talks to him psionically through a psionic implant. So let's keep in mind that when it comes to like the hoax alien invasion, this has been going around for a while. So we'll get into that in a minute.
So, at the advice of my superiors, I'm going to attempt to give you a little bit of a potential possibility to understand what may occur and why it may or may not be a good thing if we end up in a hoax alien invasion sometime in the next 6 to 24 months. Okay? So, everyone following
6 to 24 months.
along so far? Okay. So, show of hands, how many people think hoax alien invasion would suck? All right. A scripted event in which the hostile force is a friend pretending to be the bad guy. Sure, you can call it a false flag if you want. I think it steps a little bit beyond normal false flag operations at this point, but because it wouldn't necessarily just be false either. It's a little gray area. All right, how many people think that a hoax alien invasion would be the awesomest thing in the world? Ooh, nobody. Okay, this is going to be a hard sell. All right, so I'm going to attempt to convince you, not hopefully through a strong arm tactic, but hope to convince you through a few logical points why a hoax alien invasion might be the best frickin' thing we could ever have. Ooh, silence. Okay, this is going to be fun. So, let's talk briefly about the state of the world. The state of the world right now is a shit tornado and a diarrhea hurricane.
Well, there goes the monetization of this video. Mwah. Thanks, Cramer. So the hoax alien invasion, Greer, from films like Unacknowledged, has been warning the public about a hoax alien invasion for years because his inside sources with the government have told him that it was on the books to do something like this. And so in his films, he warns everybody not to believe the mumbo jumbo if it happens. And that's a big part of his, I don't know if it was serious or unacknowledged, but he makes it clear that this is a shenanigan, that they, the bad guys, Mr. Cramer's faction, want to do this as a way to create disclosure on their own terms while exerting control over the public and pretty much, destroying everything to be able to then piece it back together again the way they want to. And it's a big topic that Greer gets into, and where are the sources of his information? I don't think we really know. But what if this guy is telling the truth? What if his sources are Mr. Cramer's sources, and this is the legit information? And oddly enough, these same sources actually want people to know about it ahead of time because they are so benevolently just trying to introduce ETs to the public in this particular way. And they're not intimidated if a lot of people already know it's BS. And that's kind of what's being argued here. It's a very interesting way of looking at it all.
All right? So no matter what you think of who the sides are, who the good guys or the bad guys are, the truth is there is just shit everywhere. Okay? And that's not going to change anytime soon. Because in order for us to get to a place where such an event could occur, the ripples of stability across the social psychological fabric have to be very loose. If they're very rigid, people will resist a changing event and it will harm their psyches and they will be more likely to freak out. We don't want people to freak out. We want to mitigate freaking out. Most people will not freak out. However, two things to consider here. One, okay, another quick poll. How many people want to meet an alien tomorrow? All right. How many of you are like, no, I do not want to meet an alien tomorrow? Okay, that's interesting. So, here's the part of your brain that's telling you that you want to meet an alien, your frontal lobe. Your frontal lobe is going, yeah, meeting an alien. That'd be cool. Someone from another world, might learn something, new experience, sounds like fun. Now, if you have another biological entity that is standing next to you that is not like you, two things are going to happen. Your frontal lobe is going to go through that exercise of going, oh, there's an alien. This is what I've been thinking about. I would very much like to talk to this person. That's really cool. Your frontal lobe is going to do that over a few seconds. But way before that happens, your amygdala, in a couple of nanoseconds, is going to make another decision for you. And that decision is whether or not you're going to panic. I guarantee you, more than 90% of you, given that circumstance, without any preconditioning or pre-training for such an event, will panic because your amygdala is going to make that decision before your frontal lobe ever even has an opportunity to think about it. Okay? So
it's so true because I've been in this situation with other types of para experiences, and it's funny, even in astral experiences sometimes starting out, because you think, well, wait a second, how do you have an amygdala if you're on the astral plane? Well, pretty sure you do. And I've been in the same kind of situation. But this is the same thing that Emery Smith has talked about, who also has a story similar to Cramer's, but there's no 20 him back. He just claims in his body in this life he worked in these programs, and basically he's talked about how when you encounter an ET face to face, like you're gonna freak out. Like you can think, I'm not gonna freak out. I don't ET. It's an ET. What big deal? It's another species. There's other species on this planet. There's dogs running around. There's cats and there's giraffes. What's an ET species? No big deal. He's like, ah! It means when you see an ET, you just freak out. And I thought that was very funny. And it's the same thing that Cramer is saying here.
When we understand what disclosure actually means, we talk about all these things about what we think it means, but let's talk about some nuts and bolts of what it actually means when it happens. Everyone's going to have to go through a process, mentally and emotionally and psychologically, right? Everyone. Individually, as a group, family members, communities, cities, states, countries, everyone's going to have to go through it together. Statistically, about 85% of everybody within 14 to 90 days will acclimate and come to acceptance. Not too shabby. But it's that 15% of mentally and emotionally unstable people that we're concerned about. 15% of the population is a good chunk. You set those people off by shocking them, surprising them, making them think the world is going to end, that the grand battle between light and dark and good and evil is happening before them, that Armageddon is unfolding before their eyes. They might freak out a little bit.
First of all, he's completely right. Please tell me, Mr. Cramer, how a hoax alien invasion isn't going to do exactly those things and literally make it look like the world is ending before our eyes and not completely set that 15% off to just have mass, I can't say the SUICID word, but mass self crossings, that it won't cause those types of effects. And I guess he clarifies exactly what it would mean or why this is the best route as this video goes on, but like, what the heck? I mean, what do you think is going to result in mass panic and just absolute pandemonium and chaos? A kind of like fake alien war, which I'm guessing would be kind of like the film Wag the Dog, except instead of a war in a made-up European country, it's a war with like a made-up alien civilization. Or like a ET that comes out on frickin', I don't know, Lawrence O'Donnell and Tucker Carlson Tonight, who looks like us, and they find the prettiest looking one that everyone gets a crush on because these like Nordic looking ETs, they're pretty good looking, and bring him out on the talk show circuit and be like, yeah, I'm a Pleiadian, and we're the ones driving these UAPs around, and we've been hanging out and living amongst you guys, and now we're coming forward, and we think it'd be a good idea if you do this and if you do that, and here's like a here's some public files people can access to learn our language. These are photos from planet Epsilacalon or whatever. This is our planet, this is our people, this is our all this stuff, and you can access it, you can freaking torrent it, and it's great to meet everybody, and just integrate them into society that way. No, I mean, are that 15% really going to panic that much if there's just a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, cute person on the TV who happens to be from space? That's not gonna cause such a. I mean, if this is these military cabals thinking this thing through, they just don't. I don't know. It just baffles my mind. So let's keep hearing what he has to say.
And they might do something stupid, and they might do something dangerous. They might not just decide to kill themselves. They might decide to kill themselves and their entire family with them, their wives and their children. Or they may decide to get together with a religious organization that they participate with, lock themselves in a church, and burn it to the ground. These are not hypotheticals. These have happened before when people thought the world was coming to an end.
And they won't think that the world is coming to an end if there's a freaking hoax invasion happening. It's the most backwards thinking I've ever heard. It's like, typical like military thinking, isn't it? It's like, well, we'll just fight our way to peace. It's like we want peace in Vietnam, right? Let's drop more warheads on Vietnam in like a week than we did in all of World War II. That'll cause some peace. We'll give them some peace. It's the same attitude, and it just boggles my mind. If there really is someone who's going to do that because a cute Nordic ET appears on Tucker Carlson and is like, yeah, we're from the Pleiades, but I'm here, I live on Earth, and I love Star Wars, and I love Katy Perry. If there's really someone that's going to burn a church down because of that, then that person's going to probably do this anyway. They're going to do it anyway, even if, if there's a hoax invasion, it's going to be even more likely. But apparently these military psychologists, they have this idea that the hoax invasion is actually going to reduce those chances. So those same off-kilter people who might do that if they see the bubbly blonde Nordic ET appear on TV would do that, but yet if there's a hoax invasion, or the world literally is maybe ending, they won't do that. And this is what the military psychologists seem to believe. And maybe they might be correct, because apparently they calculate all this stuff out, and they do mock trials, and they do psychological profiling of people, and this is what they think, as weird as it sounds. Let's keep listening.
So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen, and that no one starts off a trend committing mass suicides or murders. Again, with this tiny fraction of mentally and emotionally unstable people.
This video is not going to get monetized.
So the notion is, there's really two ways that we can have a disclosure moment, right? There's a path A and a path B. Path A is where we create a moment that we call "take me to your leader," right? Someone lands on the lawn, steps out, says, "take me to your leader," and we have this nice, peaceful kumbaya moment with an extraterrestrial friend who plays the part of the first initial contact. Even though we've had that a very long time ago, it would be a pretend event to say, "oh, we're just having contact right now."
Of course, it happened a long time ago. It would be setting it up as theater, but it doesn't have to be like land on the lawn and like an alien that looks like a little gray creature. It could again be one of these human-looking ETs. We call them Nordics. They tend to have great genetic programs or whatever. That's why they all look hot. And they don't have to land on the lawn. They could walk into the White House and appear at a press conference. And if they're just really likable and they have good social skills, they can literally just charm their way into disclosure, and no one has to freak out. And the controversy will be like, how come we have ET visitors and they're all white? That'll be the thing. That'll be the headline. It's like, where's the diversity of species? That's what people will be freaking out about. All the social justice warriors, on MSNBC, they'll be the ones freaking out about like hashtag not my ET, because they're white, and white people are like scum of the earth now, according to whatever this weird social brainwashing is that's happening in society right now. But in other words, it'll just be silly stuff. It doesn't have to be this this crazy thing. People can handle it.
That's one option. With that option, unfortunately, the negative side effect of that is the chaos of people not being sure where to self-direct themselves. And with people not sure where their compass point's going to go, you create chaos. And the potential for that 15% to go absolutely apeshit under that plan A doesn't look so good on paper. Not my plan, not my idea, but people who get to make these decisions have looked at that and said, what's the other option? Okay, option B is hoax invasion.
So there's no place for your compass to point. I don't know. I really don't know if that's actually going to have the effect like this military, whatever it is, think tank believes. I just don't. It seems like just a massive overestimation to do a hoax invasion.
Where we have a similar neighbor and or friend show up and say, "I'm the bad guy," right? And then We got our asses handed to us at first for a little while, right? Gives us an excuse to bring out all of this covert technology that we've been hiding for so long, right? We can all of a sudden, through a desperate, immediate life or death need, start building spaceships, railguns, plasma rifles, whatever we need, right? And after a little while, we do a little better, but we still lose. And then someone else shows up. Another friend. But this is a friend who's pretending to be our friend, not our enemy, and says, I'm going to help you chase away the bad guy. And then they help chase away the friend who is pretending to be the bad guy, and then invasion's over.
How many people are actually going to die in this invasion, Mr. Cramer? If you ever watch this video, Mr. Cramer, or if somebody wants to take this as a soundbite and give it to him, that's my question. Because it sounds like that little goofy strategy you just outlined involves an actual war. When you say asses handed to us, it sounds like you mean hundreds or thousands of U.S. service personnel being killed. And then what will happen then? People watch this video and they watch Greer's work, and they realize after the fact that, my brother, my son, my husband was killed in a false flag attack that's completely out in the open. Everybody knows it was out in the open, and they did this whole charade as a way to reveal something that they could have done peacefully, but they decided to do it this way. I think at that point, the thing to do is to take some of that ET technology that we've disclosed, the railguns and whatever you name it, whatever the anti-gravity technology, and then use it on the motherfucking White House. Because that's what I would want to do. I would want to be part. At that point, I would be so angry. I would be happy to completely rise up against a government that's so evil that it would kill hundreds, maybe thousands of U.S. military service personnel, maybe civilians, to to manipulate us like that. Like, I wouldn't tolerate that. And now all the information is out in the open, and everyone's been talking about that, and you have white hats warning us about this and telling us to reject an invasion when it happens. If they want to do this, it has to be complete wag the dog theatrics, and nobody can die. That's the only way to do this. Besides all the people who will be jumping out of buildings and taking their own lives because the news will be so terrifying, besides all those people who will die, nobody else, there can be no, hoax ET craft coming in and blowing people up. Because once that happens and then all this information is already out there, that's going to be a level of pandemonium that this military think tank wouldn't be able to believe. It would be so evil that, again, people would rise up, and it wouldn't just be protests. It would be like a legit civil war, and the people initiating that war would be in the right. Those would be the ones that were have almost like a moral obligation. If you have a government slaughtering its own people to do this type of thing, then the moral obligation is to rise up and remove that government from power, which probably should, if this guy is telling the truth, frankly, it should happen now. Unless they can pull this whole thing off and no one gets harmed, in which case, okay, then we're having a different conversation. So these are different paths, and Cramer does not elaborate upon this.
But we focused everybody's attention on one thing. I don't know how many of you have traveled the world lately. There are places in the world where you have groups of people next to each other that hate each other so badly that they are not willing to exist while that other group exists. All over. We have more people wanting the demise and extinction of other groups of people than we ever have. And as childishly simple as it sounds, you get everybody focused on one thing, and that's actually a good thing. if we get everybody to stop focusing on killing each other for just a little while, reset some neural pathways, and focus on something that's not us, so that around the fire pit you can have every person from every walk of life, every racial group, every religious background, and they can all agree on one thing. Damn aliens. And that's fine for that period of time. It's not something we're going to continue for the next century. It's not something that we want to sell the idea aliens bad. We don't want to do that. We want people to focus on something so that they're not focusing on what they're focusing on now. Because what they're focusing on now is a series of divisively planned propaganda operations designed to divide and conquer.
This is actually where it gets really interesting, and I really agree with him. And this is the main idea behind the hoax invasion, is to unify people together. And I get that, and that again, if somehow they could pull the whole thing off without killing innocent people, then I can see how it's a good idea to some extent, or why they would say it's a good idea. Especially what Cramer is about to go into next, as he talks about the social engineering that's been happening. And it's interesting, like if Cramer, who basically I call him one of the bad guys, but his team of bad guys were not the ones responsible for the social engineering. It means what other bad guy? There's worse bad guys than even the military-industrial complex. There's worse people who have been manipulating our society, manipulating our politics, and that's led to a state where maybe we do need to have a fake threat to unify us. So let's hear what he has to say about that.
How many Americans do we have here today? I mean, most of you are Canadian. This is my first time in Canada, by the way. Thanks for having me. Thank you. But I just want to ask that question because I honestly don't know how well you understand the American political system right now, or what's happening in the American political system, because most Americans don't understand what's happening in the American political system, okay? But for people who are paying attention, Civil War 2.0 is brewing, hot and heavy, okay? And there are foreign intelligence agencies from other countries who are fueling those people with propaganda information, money, intelligence, and in some cases, money for weaponry. Does this sound familiar? Have we ever done this as Americans? Us. I mean, have we ever gone into other countries and divided up the sides and armed them both and got them fighting against each other and caused destabilization? Okay, we've done that. So guess what? It's happening here. Sorry, there.
And this is when sometimes Cramer, he's just so right about things. He's so astute in his observations. And that is what's happening right now, and you reap what you sow. So we've been doing this to other countries for so long, and now we're in this weird civil war situation, which is clearly social manipulation. And you reap what you sow. We've been doing this to other countries so long, now it's happening to us. Big surprise.
All right? I mean, but sorry, you're our next door neighbor, and you're as enwrapped in this with us as anybody else could possibly be. So you're in it whether you want to be or not. But this is what's happening here. We're seeing this incredible amount of propaganda, confusing people, dividing people. People on the right think the left is absolutely want to start a civil war, and the people on the left are concerned the right absolutely wants to start a civil war, and they both better start it first before the other one does. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, people are not listening to this? But this is not just happening here, there. It's happening all over. Because there is a shifting in balance of power. And anytime there's a shifting in balance of power, there's an opportunity for those to kick out the table leg from someone else so that they can get a few feet ahead. So there are people who certainly don't hate us, but really know that it will benefit them if we fall down and break an ankle. Because it changes the fluxing, shifting of power, changes the balance of power in a way that serves other people, other countries, other interests. So we very, very much would like to avoid a civil war. Anyone who thinks that a civil war would be awesome, let me just refer you to the previous one. Historically, if you don't know about it, read up on it. It was awful. was terrible. It was horrible. Many people died. We talk about brother fighting brother, killing brother, because that's what was happening. Families were divided across the Mason-Dixon line, and they shot and killed each other. It was horrible. We don't want that to happen again, for so many reasons. Now, we understand that in the attempt to communicate to people to try and straighten them out, it's not working. Okay? I run into people all day long who come to me and say, oh, Randy, don't you think that this and that, and they want to basically have their own belief system reinforced because of confirmation bias. They don't want the truth. They want what they believe to be reinforced. And if I tell them that what they believe isn't true, then cognitive dissonance kicks in, and then I must not be real or true or telling the truth because I'm disagreeing with what this person wants to believe. True story. A couple weeks ago, I was at a local conference back in my home state. I was having this exact conversation. I was starting off having this exact talk about confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance. And a person who was sitting in the audience, who I will not name, but if I said their name, you would all know who it was, because this is a person who is a speaker and a researcher, whom I thought would know better. But
Who do you think it was? Greer? Was it Wilcock? I don't think so. Wilcock doesn't attend things as audience members. Michael Salla. Michael Salla's super level-headed, and he would never do that. But Salla has a great work, by the way. Also, I think Sala's interviewed him before, so no. Who could it be? I don't know. You got me. I think it was. If anybody would really get under something, if this guy would get under anyone's skin really bad, it'd be Greer, because Cramer basically is pitching the exact thing that Greer is fighting against. And I'm gonna have to take Greer's side. I'm not saying this was Greer was the guy who started shouting at him, but as much as I like Cramer, I think this whole plan is something that the baddies are cooking up. One of these things. They create this hoax invasion, and then it's like that. What was that skit? I forget that this British comedy show. They look at each other. The Nazi officers are like, "Are we the baddies?" That's what this reminds me of.
as if on cue, I said something that this person did not agree with, and they started yelling and screaming and shouting at me from the fifth row about how I must be wrong. It was the most bizarre thing ever. I have asked so many people, have you ever had someone do that to you? Like another speaker start yelling? And they're, no, I've never had that happen. So I've never heard of that happening at an event before. I've never had it happen. I was shocked. But it was on cue, right? I was talking about confirmation bias, cognitive dissonance, and then the minute I said something that they didn't like, they got defensive and reactive and jumped down my throat because I was the one telling them that they had to examine what they thought was right.
It's actually, I totally agree with him though. It's the cognitive dissonance, and look, we all need to be able to keep this in check and not react this way. Even with this channel, when I call people's extremely held beliefs into question, for example, a few videos back we did the expose about Abraham Hicks, and that has resulted in people flipping out at me. There's enemies on this channel. They only watch this channel just to downvote the videos, no matter what the content is. There's people who, before I blocked them on Facebook, like their mission was just to follow me around and talk about how terrible Cyrus is because of content on this channel or in the books or on the Facebook group or wherever, because it contradicts some deeply entrenched spiritual metaphysical idea, and it whips them into a frenzy. Maybe these are the same 15% he was talking about who might go burn a church down when ETs come to land. Probably is.
So we know that that's the problem. We can't straighten these sides out right now. We've tried. There's no way to bring them into a middle ground right now because everyone's convinced that they're correct and that the other side are a bunch of blood-drinking baby murderers.
What he's saying is a hoax alien invasion may be the only way to unite Trump and Nancy Pelosi. We saw that Nancy Pelosi ripped Trump's State of the Union address yesterday. And maybe the hoax invasion is not just to disclose ETs, it's to bring people together. Again, maybe this is a good idea, but unless Cramer can address the elephant in the room, which is the body count that something like this would cause, then I'm not buying it. And I'm also not buying the idea that this would work as smoothly as they think, that it wouldn't, people can't be unified positively. It's like there's such little faith in humanity, even though they might have a steely-eyed realism here. I think positive disclosure could also unify people in a positive way. Not necessarily, it could stop the U.S. tension, the U.S. coming civil war, just by nature of the fact of realizing maybe our greater purpose in the universe, yeah. So does it have to be the way that they're saying?
Okay. So there really are a limited number of choices to avoid some of the problems that are inevitably going to happen if we don't interrupt them. I wish I could remember off the top of my head who said this. A famous Native American chief who said, look, if we don't change the direction we're going to end up exactly where we're headed. Right? Right? Okay, so this is a situation. If we don't change the direction that we're going to go exactly where we're headed into Civil War 2.0. So that and so many other conflicts that are boiling over and getting ready to explode would be mitigated by a single hostile enemy. All right? So again, we get to bust out all our tools, bust out all our toys, create a narrative in which we get to get through our disclosure event with only a little bit of hair mussing.
So that's the big question. Would it only be a little bit of hair mussing, or would it be hundreds of service personnel being evaporated by ET railguns by a fake enemy that actually has to blow stuff up and take people's lives to make a convincing hoax invasion? And would it not cause mass end of the world like hysteria and people jumping out of rooftops to a level that would be far surpass what would happen if this were to just be a peaceful, like I said, you have on Tucker Carlson and frickin' Anderson Cooper, a pretty ET blonde who comes in and talks about her civilization and that they're the ones flying the UFOs around and they're just fun, happy-go-lucky people, and yeah. So I understand, but I really understand the threat of the looming U.S. Civil War and how a hoax might be the necessary thing to stop these things from happening. So I get that point of view, but I also think that, frankly, I think that if this technology starts coming out and we start advancing into an interstellar civilization, don't you think in a way like, wait, what do people fight about in the political landscape? Like healthcare, right? Private versus socialized healthcare, like these hot button issues that are bringing us to possibly a war. Well, we don't have to worry about that anymore because we could have technology to provide a kind of resource-based economy where we have so many resources that we're not fighting over money like that. And Cramer, in the next half of this video, we're just going to go into those possibilities, the possibilities of what a post-disclosure world would look like, and the economic benefits of that, and also like what our major trade current exports to ET civilizations are, and a lot of other topics which I'm going to save for the next half of this video. So I'm going to put up a part 2 of this if you enjoy this and this analysis, so then you can wait for that. In the meantime, subscribe to this channel and like this video, share it if you think it's valuable information, or also be sure to check out the Reddit Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics page where you can discuss this and more topics, as well as on the comments. And this is still growing, but of course I'm back on Facebook, so the Facebook is up and running. It's that's the really big group that you can participate in as well. Or head to afterlifetopics.com and check out a book like Understanding Life After Death, The Afterlife and Beyond, all that good stuff if you want to find out more about my work. And lastly, of course, as I mentioned before, become a patron. You can sign up for classes, behind-the-scenes engagement with guests and interviews and lectures, talks, and all that good stuff. All available for patrons at the $30 and above level to help keep this YouTube going, the Facebook group, the Reddit group, the future books going, future projects. All that helps keep this operation going. So I appreciate anyone who helps out on that level. All right, so stay tuned for the second part of this little series, where we go into more really interesting topics that Cramer brings up and my analysis of those topics. Finally, if there is a hoax alien invasion, I encourage you to please take a look at this video or share this video around so we understand exactly what's going on and we don't have to freak out and panic if these bozos in the military-industrial complex decide to go on with this plan. This will be very interesting if any of this actually happened, and then we can look back historically at videos like this one. All right, talk to you guys soon.